Jimmy Lai has been convicted and is awaiting sentencing. I would expect Starmer to raise that case and not shy away from that. I think that's become so central.
From golden age to ice age and everywhere in between, the UK's relationship with China has been a volatile one, veering from handshakes and investment bonanzas to distrust and public spats, all in the space of a decade. Later, Sir Keir Starmer's hoping to bring some stability to diplomatic ties as he heads to Beijing on the first visit of a British leader for 8 years. Only a week ago, the government approved China's mega embassy on the old Royal Mint site amidst warnings of espionage and threats to dissidents. And this morning, it's reported Beijing hacked the phones of Downing Street aides for years. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's trade war with Xi Jinping shows no signs of abating anytime soon. So, against this febrile atmosphere, can our PM pull off his Chinese charm offensive? Well, joining me live from Beijing is the Times' China correspondent Richard Spencer. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good afternoon here.
Good afternoon. The Prime Minister, Richard, is walking a difficult tightrope. On the one hand, he wants to widen financial cooperation and deepen security ties. But on the other, he has to address concerns ranging from Taiwan's future and Hong Kong democracy to industrial espionage and human rights abuses. So how does Starmer square that circle without invoking the wrath of Chinese wolf warrior diplomats?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Very hard to answer. It's not quite clear to a lot of people what exactly Starmer hopes to achieve by this trip, other than looking more statesmanly on the world stage. I think that's a genuine desire of Starmer. I think he thought that some of the swings of policy of the previous Conservative government, as you say, went from golden era with China very quickly to ice age, very turned on a dime, really, from being very probably over friendly towards China, very much a rival geopolitically, to being so hostile that prime ministers wouldn't even visit. He wants to look more statesmanlike, more moderate, more measured in his approach. What he hopes to get out of it, another matter. I mean, he's talking about trade. There's a big trade imbalance in China's favour. There's no sign that there's much we can do to reverse that, though I think that's what he wants to do.
And how will the Chinese Communist Party be approaching the visit? I wonder if it's of equal importance to Beijing and what Xi Jinping will be looking to get out of the trip.
I think he gets out of it validation. The more Western allies, more allies of America, particularly at this time when President Trump seems to be deliberately, trying to annoy his Western allies, the more that then come to Beijing makes it more look as if they're seeking favors, seeking help, seeking closer ties because of the breakdown in relations in the West. So that is good for President Xi's long-term aim to challenge and even take over from America as the sort of the world's leading power.
Well, Starmer's been accused by the Conservatives of kowtowing to the Chinese leadership. Is that a fair criticism, particularly when it was the previous Tory government that hailed that golden age of relations and investment between the two countries? I mean, it doesn't feel that long ago that David Cameron was pulling pints with Xi Jinping in a cosy Cotswold pub.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think what there is a genuine criticism for is if Starmer comes to China and soft pedals on some of the issues that clearly divide Britain and China. But there's no sign so far that he's done that. I mean, he raised the case of Jimmy Lai, for example. This is going to be key, I think. Jimmy Lai, the newspaper proprietor in Hong Kong, who's on trial there for sedition, who faces life in prison. Now, the very first time Starmer met Xi Jinping, just after he'd become prime minister, he did raise that case. Now, Jimmy Lai has been convicted and is awaiting sentencing. I would expect Starmer to raise that case and not shy away from that. I think that's become so central. He is a British citizen, Jimmy Lai. Starmer has a good reason to raise that case, and we'll be looking to see if there's any result of that. You can't really expect a result on that, but I think you'd expect a British Prime Minister to raise that case and other human rights cases.
And also, Richard, if we widen this out, I wonder to what extent Donald Trump's Davos Diplomatic Demolition Act, as the FT put it, affect UK-China relations. Will Beijing attempt to exploit a fracture in that transatlantic relationship and attempt to pull Britain closer in its orbit?
I think it's playing quite a subtle game, China. I don't think it wants to be seen to be taking advantage of that, because it certainly is taking pleasure in this breakdown in the Western relationship. It has a particular dislike of NATO, particularly if NATO is going to expand its horizons and start forging alliances with Far East Asian nations like Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. That's a big concern of China. So if NATO breaks down, that's very much in China's interest. On the other hand, it also is also aware that if it seeks to capitalize on that breakdown too much, then it might drive the mice back into Trump's arms, if you like. So I think it's not very much. It's very much not commenting on that. It's very much saying this is just a standard meeting between leaders who are both, after all, leaders of countries with permanent seats on the UN Security Council. So that's that's quite enough for China to give Starmer the full panoply of an honoured guest welcome. So they don't really need to make that point. Trump's making it for them.
And it's not just Britain that Beijing is courting. The Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney recently visited China, and the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz may also follow. Richard, whilst I have you, we must also touch on your fantastic coverage of Xi's latest military purge, which is a story full of intrigue and involves the president's childhood friend.
Yeah, I mean, we call him his childhood friend. I mean, as was pointed out to me the other day, just because you know someone growing up doesn't mean to say they're your friend. You may just have a grudge against them for the rest
Very
of your
true.
life. Their fathers were friends, and both generals in the PLA. And so we assume that they were quite close growing up from that point of view. There is, of course, some evidence that they were more than just childhood acquaintances. Although they rose through the ranks separately, Zhang Youxia, the general in the army, rising on his own merits, he was a war hero. He fought in the China-Vietnam War on the front lines, was commended for his bravery there. So he's a formidable figure in his own right. But they were at the top of the apparatus together. And clearly, for a decade, there was a lot of trust between them because she had Zhang at the top of the military, overseeing the massive reforms and modernization that she put in place. So, yeah, the fallout between them is certainly spectacular. And as you say, lots of rumors about what underlay it. And clearly, she felt threatened by Zhang. I mean, that has been made clear even in the state media coverage of this case, that the general was accused of encroaching on the role of Xi Jinping.
OK, Richard, thank you very much indeed. The Times' correspondent in Beijing, Richard Spencer there. And of course, we'll have all the latest diplomatic developments over the coming days. So keep it Times Radio and you won't miss a thing.